from Mexico originally. I'm a first-generation Mexican. I grew up in Oregon. I lived in Florida and Georgia, and the place that I never wanted to be at was here in Texas. But now it's my favorite, and I've been an activist. I'm the founder and president of the Hispanic Republican Club in North Texas. I'm a full-time activist, like I said, and I've been appointed by the governor to the Acupuncture Board of Examiners. I'm a precinct chair, so pretty much I do everything as a grassroots leader.
Hi, my name is Chad Green. I'm on the McKinney ISD. I'm a McKinney ISD trustee, school board trustee. I've always lived in Texas. Every time I try to move out, I just can't make it happen for some reason. My father was, his father was from Oklahoma. He was an Osage Indian. And if you know anything about the FBI, that's actually where the FBI was created, was to deal with Osage Indians, because the head rights, people were coming in and killing them to get their head rights. And that was not a long time ago either. So it was within 2 generations. So my other side of the family is English and Irish, English and Scottish. So I'm sure all 3 of the DNA strands that are going on in my body here are really at war with each other all the time. So happy to be here though, dealing with this issue.
How you doing, guys? I'm TJ Riley. I'm originally from New York, and New Jersey is where I grew up. I moved out here 10 years ago. Opened my business as a general contractor, just a business owner. I've been active in politics here. I ran for city council 4 years ago, and just had a kid, but I think I'm ready to start getting more involved again. So thank you guys for coming.
Good evening, my name is Larry Jacobs, and I am an original McKinneyite, born and raised in McKinney, Texas. Went to school in McKinney. As a matter of fact, I grew up just a few blocks from where we sit right now today. I went to ESW High School. My wife and I, both, my wife and Linda right here in the blue. We left Doty, went to integrated McKinney High School, graduated from McKinney High School in '67. I shouldn't have told all that, you're putting all that together now. But we've been active in the community, active in church, active in the community, and I'm like Chad, myself, I'm a member of the McKinney ISD School Board of Trustees, Place 1 McKinney, all the schools east of Highway 75.
Okay, so now of course this one's not gonna, there we go. That phone number right there is this phone right here. Originally we planned on giving y'all an opportunity to write down your questions and submit them ahead of time, but we're calling it an audible here, so if you'll go ahead and text me your questions, if they're not too scary, I'll go ahead and read them off. So I had a couple of openers, so I'll start with that. So relationally, do you think McKinney/Collin is better or worse than, and we'll give you the option of what it was for the people that have been here forever, and from where you came from for those of you who have relocated here. And you can start whenever you're ready.
What was the question?
The relations, right? Just about the cultural, racial interrelations. Do you think they are better or worse than what they previously were if you're local here, or better or worse than where you came from if you relocated? So whoever would like to jump on that first.
Being from McKinney, born and raised here, born in segregation and going into integration, I I've never really had any problems per se, like we see today. And I think from where it was to what it is now, it can always be better. For the simple fact, and I think where we are today, this is the start which should take place in every community for people to come together and express where they've come from, where they are, what they expect from one another. Because everyone that I've come in contact with, from all different races, once a person get to know you, perceptions of individuals instantly change. And that's been the problem, I'll say, in society as a whole. We just perceive things without knowing who people really were. Because there's good and bad people in all races. And that I'm gonna use a scripture here. The wheat separates, the Lord separates the wheat from the chaff. And a lot of the bad that we've seen, if us as being the good or the example, if we're the light that shines, then light overcomes darkness, and that's what we need to do here in McKinney. As I think McKinney, being using the state of unique by nature, I think that's what we need to be, the catalyst in regard for being unique in McKinney, and what projects in McKinney should be the light throughout Collin County, through the state of Texas, and they can be just spread like the fires are spreading throughout the nation.
So yeah, so I would base it off of my time in New York, growing up in New York and New Jersey, and I can tell you that right off the bat that it's a lot more segregated up there in New York. People stay till their ethnicity, even as close as northern and southern Italians stay to their own for the most part. But I mean, even as I was growing up, I was seeing that it was starting to integrate a little bit more, even up there. But yeah, I think when I moved here 10 years ago, I noticed right away that people were less judgmental of different races. And I was told when I was up there, you have to watch out, because I come from my wife is black, so we interracial marriage or whatever. So they were like, watch out for that, they're gonna get on you. But the most trouble I ever had was when I was in New York City, and someone told me to date my own kind, and I was like, what? When I move out here, I see interracial couples all everywhere. So, for my experience, it's been better. But as far as nationally, I think it's probably the same. I'm a little younger than you, so. we have some work to do, but overall, I think it's trending better or about the same.
It's hard for me to make a comment on McKinney because I haven't had a whole ton of experiences in McKinney regarding this. I've had experiences in other places. When I was in California, there's things that I heard comments teachers make that were incredibly judgmental and racist. I mean, they just were. I've been in Alabama and was working as a vendor trying to help an education plan for a governor, a guy who was running on the Democrat ticket for governor. Just racist stuff coming out from the house, so I had to step away from that. And my boss at the time was African American. I told him what happened. He goes, well, let's move on. Let's go to something else. I love El Paso to death. I spent a long time there, got a lot of great friends. But I went to volunteer and help a friend of mine who had a volunteer group there. And they made the announcement in front of 20 people sitting there, if you're white, our kids don't look like you, so you can't come help them. I was like, well, part of my background is Osage Indian. Is that okay? Can I separate my DNA over here and still help kids? Because you think about that, when I was a kid, I was going to football camps. I mean, I got coached by Mean Joe Green. The guy is an incredible leader. You know, yes, he was an NFL player and I had stars in my eyes, but when we were on that field, he was really teaching me things. And it wasn't because of the color of his skin, it wasn't because of the color of my skin, it's because we both loved football and he really enjoyed what he was doing. And that carried over into a passion that I had. And so when I talk to people today, man, can you recognize the passion in somebody else? What are the redeeming qualities that they have? I mean, I'm not sure we should be looking at any skin color, which yes, mine's freckled and white.
So like I said, I was a first generation Mexican, and so I was 9 years old growing up in Oregon, and there it was predominantly white. And I remember there was only a few, probably around 2 black people there in the whole high school, and a few Hispanics. But what I was very impressed with was how they treated me. They never discriminated me. They treated me like a person, and they let me just be myself, which is, when I look back, is incredible to me because I've never been discriminated. When I lived in Florida, there was a lot of Cubans and Colombians, and they all thought that I was from Colombia for the most part. But again, nobody discriminated me until I moved to the South, like in Georgia, when I was dating an Anglo guy. That's when his family were like, "You're dating a Mexican?" Like, you know, that's when I started realizing, what, is there something wrong with me? Like, wait, but, you know, they were emphasizing in my skin color. But it was never really bad. And then once I got involved in politics, that's when I realized it was very evident that I was a Latina, because they were saying, look, there's a Latina involved here. And that's when I realized this is really interesting to me. But it didn't offend me because I grew up, again, just being treated like a normal person. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people, because I saw it growing up. And I actually defended a lot of Hispanics that, because I guess of the way they looked, they were discriminated on more. And I used to always stand up for them and defend them, because even though, again, I wasn't discriminated, I knew I would put myself in their shoes, and I thought, you know what, I wouldn't like it if they did it to me, and I want to be there for somebody else that's going through that. So I know it's a problem, but since I became a Christian, I realized that there's no skin color. It's all about everyone's the same, and everybody has different experiences in life and different issues, and we're all ultimately just looking for happiness. So.
Okay, why don't you hang on to that mic for just a second.
Okay.
So I have 2 more softball entry questions here, so I'm hoping somebody will text me at that number. So, next question. Is there one thing that you think is particularly good or bad about our community that stands out?
Well, the reason why I fell in love with Texas is because, again, I'm a Christian, and I think to speak about my values. I mean, my values, my conservative values, my Christian values. And that's why I fell in love with Texas. Definitely not the beach, which I miss in Florida. But that's what I really liked, and I feel like that's being taken away, and I don't like it. I feel like we can't understand each other unless we can let each other be. We have to give each other room to grow, to be ourselves, to understand each other. Because we come from, like I said, we come from different experiences in life, but we don't listen. We're too selfish. We rush to tell people how we feel instead of listening to them first and showing them love. We need more patience. We need to be more slow to anger. We need to be less selfish, like I said, in order to really show love to others and let them grow. Sometimes they might be going through something, and you just got to give them time. But if we don't start listening, then we will never understand, and we'll just continue to fight. I know the culture, that's an issue too, because when I came, I was 9 years old. We had dogs, but they lived outside. And most of my friends in school, they had dogs inside. And to me, it was the weirdest thing, because it's not the same thing. Our dogs were dirty and nasty. So when they said, oh, we live with our dog is inside, I was like, ew. I was like, gross, why would you do that? And they got offended. It actually offended me. And this was in elementary. And I was like, what? Like, what's wrong? Well, I came to find out that these dogs are really cleaner than probably some of the kids that I grew up with. So it's the cultural differences is, you know, you got to understand that, respect that, and put yourself first, you know, find out more before you jump into conclusions. And I think that's what a lot of the problems are. We're not communicating, we're not listening, and we need to be more understanding.
So yeah, I've got some issues in McKinney with some of the things that I do see. So, but I can't point out and say it's racist decision making. I think more likely it's, you know, when you look at rivers, they flow the path that's least resistant, right? I think that's the same in politics, and decisions that are made. The simple fact here is I've got a heart for the East Side. I love the East Side, but they tend not to vote in numbers. So that's one really poor mark. Number two, the property values, especially when you get on the other side of Highway 5, are really depressed, right? Compared to the rest of the city. So it becomes an attractive target for gentrification. So our city wants to now move our city council headquarters over onto the east side. And now you see the city, actually 2 years ago, you started seeing the city making moves to your house has to look like this, or we will start fining you by day, every day. I got a real problem with that. That's their property. Whether they can afford to clean the paint off the side of the house and paint the house, that's none of your business. They did not buy that house during HOA. I think to me, it smacks of government coming in and trying to take over an area of people who own their property, and they should own their property. They should be able to stay there as long as they want without the city pushing on them. So, I mean, that's kind of one aspect, but I also see that play out in politics within school districts too. El Paso and Ysleta, there is one area that votes like 80% of their population vote, and the rest of the areas are down around 20% of the population in school district races. And that area gets the most funding, gets the first to get new buildings and things like that. And so I think one of the things that we really have to make a decision on is, are what we're seeing, is it because of race, or is it because of socioeconomic issues going on with the way people are reacting, and the people that we have in office don't know where their boundaries are, and they need to be paying attention to where their boundaries are. We have to remind them of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of those things too. I was actually going to say, zoning laws, which is very similar. Not allowing, the natural progression of businesses to be able to move where they can, or where it's most financially suitable. And likewise with multifamily housing and single-family housing, the free market is going to dictate where it's going to be most viable, because no one's going to invest money in a multi-family housing in a place where it's going to fail. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially on the east side of 75, that multifamily would thrive, and it would help the community grow over there. Also, districting. We obviously have a very gerrymandered districting right now, where a lot of the historic district is cutting right into District 1. That's District 1, but yeah. So that's something that we can change. But I think overall, McKinney I still live here, so I think we're doing a very, very good job, and our positives outweigh the negatives. But there's always room for improvement with that.
I see good and bad. The good is that growth is evident, because I can remember, I'm going to go back here, I can remember when I finished school, McKinney's population was exactly 13,763. And I look at it now, it's a little, I'm I'm dating myself. Not that long, just a few years ago. It had a rapid growth spurt, you know. But now it's right at 200,000 or just a little over, and it's going to continue to grow more, which is good. But then again, I think about the bad part about it. The rapid growth is going to bring so much other change to the city. And as I see, the bad, as Chad mentioned, in regard to East McKinney. East McKinney used to be Highway 5 going east. Now they've got East McKinney, the dividing line in East McKinney is Highway 75. And when I was coming up from where we are, well actually from Church Street to 75, that was considered the affluent area of McKinney. And now I'm not going to say they, it's been classed as part of East McKinney, and then you got Deep East McKinney. And Deep East McKinney is the target for abrupt change where there's not going to be any chance for individuals within the area of East McKinney to survive with what's taking place. And the bad thing about it is, I know the city gets, I don't know if there's any city officials in here today, but I mean, hey, is this being recorded? I mean, I'm not afraid if it is.
It gets recorded, but
okay, well that's good. I mean, well, that's good. Let me talk a little bit more.
Company. Go ahead.
Let me talk a little bit more then. The thing about it is that with the McKinney Economic Development, well, I should say economic development corporations within the city, MCDCs, all these other things, these community development corporations and all these things, those things, there should be things generated in East McKinney, Deep East McKinney, other than just certain things coming in and taking over just swaths, just vast areas of land for East McKinney to thrive, because a lot of people fail to realize, and a lot of people don't know, with the exception of a few people that I grew up with and that are present in the room. Deep east of Highway 5 was a thriving area. It was, anyone that knows about Black Wall Street in Tuskegee, East McKinney basically had that same thing going on. And now it's extinct. And you have individuals there in East McKinney right now, in Deep East McKinney right now, that desire for the same thing, but the economic opportunities are not there in order for that section of town to look or be as prosperous as other parts of town. So that's the bad that I see in regard to the growth. They're not giving the individuals, the residents in that area, the opportunity to move up and prosper along with the growth.
okay, so I'm going to give a little background on this next question. I have to be very careful because I'm just a little opinionated, and that's not my job tonight. So, my childhood home, there were a lot of buildings that faced the main streets that at one point in time had a business on the first floor, while the people that lived there either were upstairs or behind it. And whether it was a shoe repair, cobbler store, or a bakery or a bar, that was very, very commonplace. And that went away as I became older. And when I located to McKinney, I noticed that there wasn't a lot of that, but there was evidence that at one time that kind of existed. So I guess that speaks to what you're talking about. So the problem being is that when the city fathers or the county decides to come in and through zoning law dictate what you can and cannot do with your property, that creates barriers of entry, right? Mm-hmm. So then the question is in order to fix this, right? That's where I'm going with this. In order to fix this, can this be done in an organic way, or must we rely on for lack of a better way to phrase it, government intervention. TJ, you want to start on this one?
Yes, I think the biggest, the quickest way to do it is, which probably won't happen, but the best way to do it is to completely abolish zoning laws, especially even if it's just in the district in a specific area, and just allowing business to grow organically. People, you know, maybe like what they call the economic development zone, or people have different ideas of maybe less sales tax in some areas. So like if there's because I know there's lack of supermarkets east of 5 right now. So if they can incentivize it by cutting the taxes on it, property taxes, sales tax on it, that would be a good incentive. So businesses can naturally go there. So we're not paying businesses to go there, because when we're paying them to go to a place, that means it was never viable in the first place, and they're just going to fail after we stop funding them. So that's just going to be worse than it was to begin with. So yeah, again, so just cutting zoning, allowing the free market to dictate what goes on, and allowing you guys to develop as you see fit.
Is government the answer? Government's the freaking problem. We had some really wise founders that created the Constitution. There's 2 books, the Constitution and the Bible, and they're both plumb lines. If we adhere to those things, we respect everybody else around us, no matter the color of their skin or their socioeconomic position. If we follow the Constitution, the Trail of Tears never would have happened. There never would have been slavery in the United States. And you see, I was watching a show today while in between meetings talking about George Washington freeing his slaves. The Constitution was an act of conscience based on the Bible. If you go back, all the precepts in there were based off of the Bible. We have got to get to the place where we're teaching our kids and we're calling into account everybody around us where they're out on the Constitution. That doesn't apply just to the federal government. That applies here to our city. That applies to our school board. Your oath is to the Constitution. Don't violate your oath. Don't be making rules about people's homes. Why? Because the Constitution talks about property rights, right? Who has the property rights? Me, the property owner. You, the property owner. Government doesn't have them. And every time we get people with no conscience whatsoever into places in government, people, they legalize theft. There's the IRS for you right now. We can't, apparently 10% was good enough for God, but it sure as hell is not good enough for our government, okay? So we're having stuff stolen from us all. Sorry.
Go right in there, buddy.
All right, man. I'll pull it back a little bit. So,
pass the mic, buddy.
Yeah. It's just, we don't have that conscience going on in our government today that these are the boundaries I can operate in. So, anyway.
I agree with all the guys. I think like businesses, they do have to be, you have to let them grow organically, like you said. You can't sustain it. It's just like everything else. You can't help people and do things for them. You have to let them do it. I grew up working in the field since I was 9. And then I became a wildfire firefighter to help my parents. Went back to school. And, I believe that you can go on, and if you want to, you can make it happen here in the U.S. And that's what I love about this country. And most of the Latino community feels the same way as me. They don't they don't want a handout. They want to feel like they can make it happen. It's a challenge for them to say, hey, you know what, I can beat you. They're very competitive with each other. That's actually a problem to some degree. I'm trying to work on that with them. But overall, they want to do it on their own, and they feel like they can make it happen here. And they really appreciate it because we came from countries that were corrupt. They were, we don't trust government. So we had an opportunity here to be everything we could be, and we are so grateful, and we don't want to lose that. So we don't want special favors. We just want an opportunity to work. And again, I don't think it has to do anything with race. I think I see people get discriminated all the time. I got discriminated by the way I looked more than my skin color, more because I was an attractive young woman. I would get discriminated all the time. Nobody wanted to be my friend because none of the girls wanted to be my friends. So if you really want to look at issues, people get discriminated for a lot of different things. And everyone has the same kind of issues, not just because, you're Hispanic or Black or Anglo. There's other issues. So, yeah, I definitely believe that we need to, less government is more. Less government is better. And I think we need to focus on the principles that this country was built on, which is Christian values. And there's a reason why it's so successful in the first place.
Again, I look back in regard to when I was coming up, how we saw various things. We saw various entrepreneurs in the eastern sector of town, and there was no help. And what each individual did, they did it on their own. But what took place after a period of time, regulations and restrictions started taking place, which limited the potential. And then again, what government has a tendency to do, not only here but in every place, they start what they call, a lot of people might not know what this is, they start redlining areas. Yeah. They redline everywhere. You can't obtain the funds you need. You can start a project, make your venture, get it up and coming. It can be sort of like an incubator project in a way as you start out, and then it grows, and you have capital to work with, but then again you need a little more capital. But then again, some institutions see that you're doing what you're doing, and then there are certain guidelines and restrictions that have taken place through government that limits or cuts you off totally for you not to continue on your venture to prosper up. So I think what needs to be done here and other places as well, just like you mentioned about there's you go to east of Highway 5, it's a food desert. It's not even a convenience store on the east side of town, not even a drugstore on the east of Highway 5. But back during the time, there used to be cleaners and all of those, not even a washateria. A laundromat. I'm old school. There's not even a laundromat east of Highway 5, But when I was coming up, I know of at least 2 thriving, not even a cleaners, dry cleaners, east of Highway 5. And those individuals did it themselves, but then again, restrictions came, zoning came, code came, and cut it out.
Okay, so let's add on to that just a tad, if I may. Okay. So one of the things that I'd had, I'm going to combine these two, and we'll start with you, and if anybody has anything to add, we'll allow that. So obviously we have an issue where there's been detrimental long-term effects by government policy east of Highway 5, and we could just maybe make that all of 75, but just for the purposes to narrow it down. So is there a way that we can correct that? And along with that, there's a lot of new development that's being put in via the city, particularly east of Highway 5. Do you think there's been adequate input taken by the residents and citizens of that part of town? And if not, how would you go about fixing that? Because a lot of that's driven just by voter turnout, right? If the city council is fearful that that area of town is going to turn out in force that are going to be a lot less likely to poke the bear, if you will. So I guess the question is two-part. How can we go about fixing it, and how do you encourage the people that aren't maybe being heard to be heard?
Okay, number one, in order for people to be heard, there has to be communication put out. Entities have the ability to put out what they want put out, and things that they don't, or things that we don't per se, not just entities, not government entities, but just individuals in general. Things that might be a detriment or might be a negative. This intent that's being implemented, if it's made public, if it's made more notable, and to get more feedback on in opposition to what you're trying to do, the best thing to do is not to say anything, if anything at all, until you've come in and got your little clique. That's a street word, clique. Your group together and go up for what you want to get done, and then boom, you busted wide open with it, and then you start implementing it. Now, in regard to the other, I think what has to be done is communication has to take place. Not only, and I'm going to go here with this because I'm going to go on another thing. I've had conversation given to me in regard for there's no communication within the schools, and I made the pitch. I said, well, you got a public access channel. I said, why don't you get a public access channel to make people, the residents that desire not to come to a school board meeting, they can look at everything that takes place on TV, just like they turn on channel 16 or whatever your cable channel is, and see the city council meeting. That way people are informed, and then when they need to come, they can come out in groves to represent or to lobby for or lobby against. But then again, when things are done just in a certain segment, you can get certain things done without the vast majority of people knowing about it until it's right at your door. Was that part one? Was that all of it?
Your call.
Okay.
You're comfortable with that? You can pass Mike.
So, do you want to read the question?
Okay. So I'm going to do my best to recap it since I kind of made it up as an amalgamation of multiple questions. So we have multiple questions that are similar,
okay.
And rather than do them all separately, I push them together.
Okay.
So the idea being is that there are issues that were obviously created by bad policy. How do we go about fixing that? And knowing that representation is a reflection of participation, how do we increase the participation so you get better representation to fix those issues?
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
Yeah, so things that the government have done and negatively affected the citizens, are you speaking like, are they liable for the damages they cause? Because I would agree with that.
For the purposes of this discussion, we'll just assume that there's not going to be any thing to repair what's already been done, more of a how can we fix it going forward.
Yeah.
Only because that's
and I mean
that's
ends up
not
being
that's beyond the scope of what we can make happen.
Yeah,
in conversation.
I mean that ends up being a slippery slope. I mean, how much do you overcompensate to fix that? And I mean, it's going to be an arbitrary answer. Everyone's going to have a different decision. But as far as communication, I think that there should be certain things that we have to there should be more things that we vote on as a democracy rather than having the city council vote on, things that cost a lot of money, things that affect the most people. And it's just, we just don't have, I just don't feel like we have that much power as an individual in the community. I mean, we can obviously vote people in and out, but there's certain things that we don't even know what happened until it's happening, and there's no way to stop it. And there's a lot of things in the community, such as like let's say, just off the top of my head, the parking garage. I think we voted against the parking garage, and they found a loophole to get it done anyway. So we just need to find a way to rein that in.
I think I'll try to keep myself from being restrained this time. I think one of the things we're dealing with right now, and I think both Larry and TJ touched on this, is communication. We don't know when things are happening. You know, what was once great about the United States, it was the freedom of the press. We don't have a free press anymore. I mean, I don't know a school district right now that's afraid of any newspaper, because the newspapers don't ask any hard questions. They're not researching any of the decisions that are being made. They're just, whatever the school district tells them is what they'll do. This is happening everywhere in the state that I'm working. I think the same thing is probably true with the city council. So, I mean, we need to get back to that. Where is our conscience? It used to be the free press was part of that conscience, right? And alerting everybody. Everybody would read the newspaper. It just doesn't happen anymore. So we're going to have to figure out communication, unrestricted communication on exposing some of these things. I mean, you know, the taking over of that, it's becoming the new parking lot for the Tubbs Brewery, you know, and there were mobile homes there before. The city basically taking that and forcing that sale put a lot of people out in the cold with where are they gonna be able to live in McKinney? And I'm assuming they had jobs around here, construction jobs or something around here. They don't have that option. So I didn't find out about it until things were already in the works. And this is happening because we don't have people coming in and a part of these behind the doors meetings, business sessions that are going on. And we desperately need that. We desperately need people to come in and tell the truth. Here's what's going on in these meetings. We need representatives that are willing to do that. Right now, we just really don't have that in a lot of places. And I know two guys on the school board, but we're already not like that much. So, so, and then when you do elect somebody that's going to be in those places and is willing to be the spoiler, man, you guys got to come out and defend them, because they're going to take it on the nose. You can just see it coming up where, you know, the other team is going to start running people against them, and that happens because they believe they can take that position. And then you're actually worse. That governmental body feels protected again.
So I think as someone that's involved in politics, you got to think about the ones that are not, right? And so my responsibility, I see it as getting in the community and educating people about what's going on, since, like you just mentioned, the news is not really, there's no credibility anymore. So educating people on the issues ultimately is up to them if they want to change things, because we can't do it alone. And if they want things to continue the way they are, you know, so be it. But they need to be educated. But who's telling them? So I feel the responsibility to do that in the Hispanic, at least in the Hispanic community. And we have to hold their elected officials accountable. And if we don't, that's why they continue to do what they want. But how do we, most people are so intimidated with retaliation. There's a lot of parents that I know that won't even speak their values anymore because they're afraid to lose their friends. So how is that even right? Do you think they're gonna come up to a meeting and protest against the candidate or any issue? No, because they might be seen in social media. Oh, did you know so-and-so was over there? They're afraid to lose their friends, their family even. Half of my family won't speak to me because of my values. So ultimately it comes down to education and letting people make their decisions. And pray that they want change. And if they don't want to do it, then they're going to reap what they sow. So we can't force anyone to do anything. Education and